Good evening. I would like to call to order the July 12, 2021 Lake Washington School Board Study Session. Let the record reflect that all board members are present. On June 30th, updated guidelines were announced for masks and seating capacity at public meetings. Due to these changes, it is no longer required to pre-register to attend board meetings, study sessions, or special board meetings. In addition, if you are vaccinated, you do not need to wear a face mask unless there are students or children present. If there are students or children present, all attendees will be required to wear a face mask in accordance with the current guidelines. For the record, there are currently no students or children present at this meeting. Therefore, if you attend a meeting, please bring a mask with you to all public meetings of the Lake Washington School Board of Directors. Board meetings, study sessions, and special board meetings will continue to be live streamed and viewable on the district's website. If you are unable to live stream the meeting, viewers can call 425-936-2813 and enter conference ID 37127 to listen to the meeting. We have one topic for tonight, and that is a discussion of OE 14, which is the draft equity policy and the language for that. Dr. Holman, can you get us started with the discussion?
Absolutely. Thank you. And the journey continues for the board. I want to express appreciation to both Director Bleasner and Director Sage. I've met with them a couple of times, and I know they met outside of our meetings to continue the work of modifying the draft policy. And so what you have in front of you tonight is an updated version. I also printed off the strike-through version, which, as you know, when you start doing strike-through and underline changes, it gets a little ugly. So you have the clean version with you as well. On my screen is also the clean version. The clean version is also located in the agenda in board docs for this meeting. And so want to recognize that there have been a number of changes, and want to leverage the expertise of both Siri and Cassandra tonight in that some of the changes were made without me present, and so want to make sure that we represent those well, kind of the background for those changes. I know we did a bit of revision even as late as today to this, and then later in the meeting, after we've done a review of the current draft, I have brought and let me underscore draft, some level of interpretation, and started thinking about indicators for OE 14.1, just to give the board an idea of what are some of the types of indicators that we would be thinking about as we start looking into the future around monitoring and what is the evaluation of this policy and as this moves forward. And so with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Siri and Cassandra. If you just want to walk us through some of the changes that you identified, that would be helpful.
There's been so many revisions. I'll try to speak to what might have been the last couple. One thing I wanted to note was that as we were reading through, we wanted to make sure that we were expressing the value that we have for our students and for their backgrounds and the diversity that they bring to our schools and the value that we have in that diversity. So rather than it being, don't do X, Y, Z, it's, yes, we value this diversity that all students bring and the cultural backgrounds and the differences that make our school a wonderful place to learn in. Oh, we're sharing a mic.
Oh, we are. And so the piece, just to sort of build on that, was sort of what you'll see, the change that took place at the start part of the board values was an addition of sort of an asset-based approach as opposed to a deficit-based approach. And that's sort of what Cassandra was speaking to. And so it continued with the first line that we had before and then added the all students have an absolute right to a learning environment where they can thrive. And so really trying to establish what was the positive view that was going forward and then recognizing those values, just laying that out clearly across the board. And that was sort of the big change in that component, really.
Yeah, I don't think we made significant changes. We didn't go line by line. We just really wanted to make sure that we were coming at it from asset-based value rather than a deficit.
Well, I was going to say in the third paragraph of the board value, on the clean copy and in the strike through and underline, it is the fourth paragraph. We also just did some adjustment in the second sentence. The board is committed to ending systemic racism, marginalization, and inequities which have negatively impacted student educational outcomes in Lake Washington School District. So just trying again to refine the language and be as specific as possible and not use jargon, but really target what we were meaning there.
I really like, thank you both for taking the time to do this. I just read through the board value statement first. I really like the changes. I have no edits at all to it. In particular, I just want to call out the addition of the last two sentences of the board values. I think are really important. This is something that we heard about through our linkages, which is we don't want this to just be a policy that we look at once and never. And it's something we've talked about too as a board. This is not something that we're just doing once and then never looking at again. And there's going to be ongoing policy development and monitoring. So I think it's important to reflect that in the values. So thank you. This is excellent.
I'll just say it's difficult for me, having read through this so many times and had made notes and then decided, no, those aren't good, but we could keep this piece. I couldn't even pull out the exact lines that are different right now.
Welcome to the world of a writer.
Am I remembering correctly that in our first meeting, we did land on a title of race, equity, and inclusion in education? Or was that prior to those meetings?
I believe that was prior to those meetings, and then there was still to be discussion going from there.
Yeah, I appreciate the challenge aversion. I just, I have edited enough things in my life to know that you get to a point where you can't see what's new. And so as far as the edits to the board values, I am comfortable with this. It sounds like negative impact. You just changed the tense there, and I'm good with that. Policy background, there are a couple of minor details in there. The last sentence has some issues, but that's kind of to be expected when you get into a fifth or sixth version. The important question I have in policy background, it's the second sentence is current data indicates. And current data it would be if we're calling out current data, then we should be calling out which current data, so that if that situation changes, it changes. Other than that, I mean, I'm not sure I want to say current data. I want to say that, as long as there are gaps, this is still an issue. But I get where you were trying to go with it. The final sentence, a failure to effectively address inequities and biases, and I think that's where there's just that needs to go. And creates a lack of belonging, and that solves most of the sentence.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So a failure to effectively address inequities and biases, then delete the word that. Create becomes creates.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom line of the sentence, perpetuates becomes perpetuate, to put all of the tenses in alignment with one another.
Do you think to your current data, currently the board's results policies, because that really is what data the board evaluates on a formal basis, and so.
Yeah, and Exactly. I mean, it's that reports, ends reports to the board indicate persistent gaps of concern. I mean, that is really, I think, where you're trying to get at it.
I agree that it should be, the current data should just be revised to reflect that it's our ends results. Current, I don't know. Yeah, no,
And
that's true.
historical, exactly. I mean, they're persistent. It's not something we've ever been in
That's right.
alignment on.
Current
Yeah.
recent?
Well, all of our ends results, right? And we don't think we've ever had one that would indicate otherwise. But, so I guess the word current, I guess you could just read the board's report, or end results reports to the board indicate, or something to that effect. I don't think there needs to be a temporal limitation on it. Chris, did you have an edit to the board values, a proposed edit to the board values statement that I heard you say?
No, John had already called it out, the tense change on
Wait,
negative impact.
sorry, I didn't catch that. What was it?
Yeah, so in the second sentence of the third paragraph, the board is committed to ending systemic racism, marginalization, and inequities, which, kill the word have, negatively impact student educational outcomes in Lake Washington School District.
Yeah.
So you're looking at making it a current statement as opposed to a statement of the past.
Yeah,
We wouldn't want to, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but since we have communities that feel that there's a historical situation, if we had it where you talk about which have negatively impacted and may continue to, and currently, you see where I'm going to give kind of a flow to it. Now, I'm not going to live and die on the sword, but it's something I want y'all to consider. Just because of the feelings that we've encountered from a lot of the groups that we've met with, that it's not all of a sudden, bing, it happened.
I hear you on that. The main reason I was in favor of going with negatively impact is the acknowledgement that we're trying to do something about it is the important piece, not that
Yeah.
it has historically existed. So this emphasizes that we care about changing the situation.
I understand, I'm just
Yeah.
concerned, but
Yeah,
that
I hear
people
you
will
on
say we're not acknowledging the
Yeah.
historical. And that, I'm afraid that's going to cause some blowback, if you
Yeah.
will, and some pain on some, in groups.
Yeah.
I support Chris's proposed revision.
So what I do think, in the sense of because it's under the board value, stating it as the future-oriented, under the policy background, ensuring that we call it out there in the sense of the data, I think we can do it that way, and then it sort of fits more to the future-oriented and then the past. I
Fine.
think that might do that.
Okay, works. I just don't want anybody to think that we're ignoring the past, and because they'll, I would get upset, and I'm sure most of our communities would.
So under the policy background, we do say educational systems have marginalized, discriminated against, and limited opportunities, and then the current data sort of, as however it's going to be reworded to the ends results, should address that piece that historically we have seen it. So I do think we do it there.
Yeah.
So that's the only edit I had in the values space. For policy background, first sentence ends with "and others," and I felt like we might want to be more specific about "and other dimensions of
Life.
other," just "and others." It's like
Yeah, it's kind of it kind of drifts.
I wanted more specificity as to what other demographic dimensions. And that's
In
awkward
other
as hell. I don't
aspects
wanna-
of life,
But yeah, right, exactly. Other
Just changing the wording, you mean?
other student characteristics.
Yeah.
That was the category we put up.
And I acknowledge that is a hard one to solve, so.
and I also understand why we went to and others.
Matt, do you have any recommended language for respectfully recognizing that there are other attributes, dimensions, characteristics?
Yeah, I think we could refer to other aspects of student identity.
Okay. Works.
I think that's a good change. Thank you, Matt. That's great.
So on the title, I think the finesse that I was hoping for is that race is in the title, but it's not the first word of the title. That equity, inclusion, and race in education was the threading of the needle that I'm real comfortable with. And for the record, the reason I feel that works better is I feel like it's bigger concepts down to smaller concepts. Equity is not only race, but race is definitely equity. It's a subset within equity.
Did you suggest a different title? I'm sorry, Mr.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Instead of race, equity, and inclusion, it would be equity, inclusion, and race. Just changing the order of the three words.
I understand where you're coming from, Chris. I'm not sure that the reordering has enough positive impact to outweigh what might be perceived as negative. That said, I'm not going one way or the other. I'm trying to think of the reactions from our publics and let's say the history of the last 18 to 24 months only.
I
And
think
some
you're- I
of
hear
those
you.
discussions we had with the various groups of the.
Yeah.
the-
And I think you're right in that sense, that there is a danger of people feeling unheard. At the same time, the standard in the other spaces I've looked at outside of here is that it's usually DEI. And that's just sort of the shorthand, is diversity, equity, and
Yeah.
inclusion. And for us to call out race explicitly is actually a step beyond where most organizations are at. But calling it race, equity, and inclusion, I just fear that race is a subset of both equity and inclusion. There are dimensions of equity that are not race. There are dimensions of inclusion that are not race. And by calling race out first, it implies that we're only looking at the dimensions that are relevant to race.
Do we have definitions on equity and inclusion, or is that something you're still working on and thinking about? No pressure.
So seeing that everything I'm bringing you tonight is draft, yes, there are draft interpretations of inclusive, I believe is the, so yes, some of these are starting to be defined.
So in thinking through it and thinking through some of the other language, is anti-racism the better language to be using in the title than race?
I can see your point there because the other two, the equity and inclusion are talking about a positive aspect. And if we're looking for something to be, for everything to be positive, not saying we're ignoring what the nasty stuff that has come to be and still is, but if we're looking for what we want to have in the future, we are looking at anti-racism. And, I mean, of course, I guess then the logical conclusion would have anti-exclusionism too, but I think that's a bit much.
Sorry, Mark.
I'm sorry, no, the only other thought I had is I know that there was a great deal of sentiment towards having the issue of race very well, I won't say dominating, but being a major point of the whole policy board value. And I think what the content we have has gone to not only a balance, but also it does not diminish whatsoever the issue of race. if we change the title, and I know this is, to be quite frank, no matter what we title it, someone's not going to be happy. I don't have a problem with the way it is, given the text that follows, because really it defines it, and it doesn't make one any less than the other. Because we all come from a different perspective. I have a son with autism, so ableism is ability is very high in our family. We have situations of anti-Semitism in our family. That also plays high. But I also know that all families have all different needs to address the inequities. And in some respects, the word race doesn't just go to African American or Latino or whatever, even into the religion aspect. Some cultural aspects of the religions call them call it a race also. The Jewish race in our family, it's very ethnically oriented as well as it is religious. My side of the family left the religion and converted three generations ago. My wife is still in the religion. So for me, it's been more of a cultural background than a religious background. Is this making any sense to y'all? What I'm trying to say is that I think we can, by virtue of that, a lot of the families, especially as we have the multi-race students, that we really fit into so many categories, it'd be almost impossible to categorize them. I think this kind of picks up, by having the title the way it is, it picks up a lot of the students out there that don't fit in a very neat niche.
I hear you, and I actually wanted to, anti-racism, and separate, two issues on the table at the moment. One is the order of the words, the other is the words. And I think the words is the more important question, actually. And I think you've got a really good idea on putting anti-racism in there instead of race, because it embeds our values in the title of the policy. Because we want to achieve equity. We want to achieve inclusion. We don't want to achieve race. So I definitely think anti-racism as a replacement for race makes sense.
Yeah.
But I still kind of stand by the notion that maybe it's just how I think, but I usually think that you start with larger and you pare down as you focus in on something. And so starting with anti-racism, that's a subset, and I really want people to be able to read this and intuitively know that it's not just race, from the title on. And by putting race or anti-racism as the first word, I fear that the other dimensions could not realize this is their policy too, for all of these other things. I think race is important enough to acknowledge it in the title. It is by far the one that we have made the least progress on in the course of our country. So it's very important to acknowledge that it is critical, but it is not all-encompassing of LGBTQIA, religion, all these other dimensions of personal identity that may not be race, and yet could have an impact on our students' performance. And so I would still favor an EIA, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism in education and policy.
We absolutely need to change the title to have it read anti-racism. It's anti-racism policy instead of a race in the policy. This is not we're not enacting a race policy here, right? We're not. I mean, it's not the policy. It's not at all descriptive of what the policy is. I mean, this policy doesn't call for, the superintendent to, exactly, to do any, for example, it doesn't say, set quotas for certain programs to match, to match the racial composition of the district. What we're wanting to achieve in the policy itself is is to make the district anti-racist. And so I think that that title needs to change to have it in there. And I thank you, Director Bleasner, for having this. I don't know how long you've had that, if that was epiphany tonight, but I'm glad it came, because I think it's much better. And I think also, it also for me, it clarified that it's a different concept than equity and inclusion for me. And I don't think it's a subset of equity and inclusion. I mean, I think it's a different concept, and I think that leading with that is something worthwhile doing, of saying that is something that is a priority for us. I mean, also alphabetically, anti-racism, equity, inclusion, that works too, if that works for you, Chris. But I support changing the policy to anti-racism and starting with that. Anti-racism, equity, and inclusion.
I know we haven't really thought about using the word opportunity in here, and maybe we don't want to make this any longer, but it occurs to me that what we're trying to do is give kids opportunity that has not been easy for them in our system historically and currently. So I'll throw the word opportunity out there and banter it around.
That is a good point. Here in the policy, right? It does get long, though. I guess my opinion would be that it should just have the three, anti-racism, equity, and inclusion in education as the policy, I think. Anyone else?
I hear where you're coming from on opportunity. It does sit well with these, but at the same time, it's kind of embedded underneath equity and inclusion.
Yeah.
It's providing access to opportunity. It's providing inclusion and opportunity. So to me, I don't need to add that. And I'm still struggling with, I think, I do hear you on that anti-racism, by changing to that, it is actually a different concept,
Yeah.
or at least pieces of it are a different concept than equity and inclusion. But I still want to be sure that kids from marginalized communities, regardless of the marginalized community, look at the title of this and see themselves in it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm worried that leading with race overweights race, and there's a shadow that, oh, it's not about me, if you're in the other dimensions that we call out in our values. By putting race in the title, we have acknowledged its importance.
Yeah.
So, I hate dead air. So I'm happy to monologue as long as y'all want me to, but no. Well, my suggestion at the moment is let's mull this, because I still feel like there's pieces of this that this is one where ultimately it's a, hey, let's just adopt it. It's not the most important thing here. In case you looked at the backside of your sheet, the clean edit on the 14.1 through 14.11 has some serious issues that we need to talk about.
Yeah, it's a little.
So I think maybe we come back to this.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. I think that, I don't know if we've heard from everybody on the title.
No, I'm okay with the mulling over on the title for a little bit. I think what happened, as Chris is pointing out on the backside under the directives, some of the edit removed some key components, I believe, just as we did the markup, and it just marked out a few more than it should have.
So I updated a better, clean version into board docs. And so, yes,
Before we leap
everything
onto
that
that-
you're referring to that's missing, Chris, is back and live in action. I apologize. As I was looking at it too, I was thinking 14.1, ensure students have
that's
a
on
school and classroom environment.
Feelings of fear.
Check.
Exactly.
That's a
a
pretty
little too
low
easy.
bar, I
Yeah.
believe. So,
Okay.
yes. On the screen right now is the updated, clean version with the 14.1 through 14.11.
Okay.
Hang on, it was Siri and then Mark.
Okay.
You're speaking on the policy value title, you go.
No, I had a different section I was looking at the policy background I wanted to go to.
Oh, go to the policy background then, if that's what you're ready for.
I'd like to see a return of the phrase feelings of fear, because I think there are feelings of fear out there by many segments of our student body, regardless of what segment they represent. I think there's feelings of fear, whether it's race, whether it's sexual origin, whether it's religion, and to be quite frank, high school is tough enough, and God knows I feared enough tests as I walked into the classroom. I don't need to fear my classmates. I don't need to fear sentiments of teachers or administrators. So feelings of fear, I think, has a legitimate place in what we want to push out.
So we had a discussion about that. Actually, that was one that Cassandra and I had added when we had met on our time and thought that. And then in discussion today, there was concern that we were assuming what the feelings were. And was that fair? Because they could be anger, it could be disengagement. And so we were saying fear was the main one, and was that really reasonable? And that was part of the reason to pull it out. Because we thought it was implying
Yeah.
what we didn't know.
Well, in the discussions that I remember hearing with the public, there were student fear. There was student fear on multiple fronts of whether it's their fellow students, whether it's staff, whether it's outside staff that comes in, the SROs, whoever it may be. And, you know, when we're not talking, fear is never a logical thing. It can be very logical, it can be very emotional, but it's still there. And for that reason, I think it needs to stay there, because I think we need to acknowledge it. I don't think we're assuming it. We had members of the public telling us that. Or at least I did in the sessions I sat in.
Hold on, Chris. I heard that as well, but I heard so many emotions expressed. Actually, the most common one I heard from students was how tired they felt by a lot of the things that were in our system. How tired it was to butt up against things all the time. How tiring it was.
So what is
Fear,
that
anger.
category?
What that tells me is that I shouldn't assume. I think I'm glad you were thoughtful about this. I shouldn't assume how a student would feel based on their interaction with the system. They may be afraid, they may be angry, they may be tired, bored, disengaged. I mean, there's so many that can. So I guess I'm having thought through this. I'm fine with how it is now. Chris, then Dr. Holman.
Now, give me a minute. I found where it was at, and I'm trying to figure out how to put it back in, because feelings of fear, I agree with both sides. The value of acknowledging fear is real, but at the same time, it's more than that. There's more emotions that matter. And, you know, being welcome, being safe, and I'm trying to figure out how to thread the needle on this, so I cede the floor.
I believe the emotions that have been expressed, I think it's I would call it an emotional toll that is expressed, and it's this kind of weight that's carried, and so to not recognize it, I think would be difficult, but to recognize it in a way that allows people to see their emotion in the policy. And so
Maybe that another sentence that addresses those three components we
Yeah.
were talking about, inclusive of fear.
right.
Maybe. Didn't want to work. Maybe another sentence that actually, you could put the feelings of fear coupled with the other two that you're speaking of to address those. And so that way, it has its own avenue, if you will. And perhaps, to be quite frank, by giving it its own avenue with the other two that you're mentioning, it allows the students to see, they see that in me. They see my situation, or they're acknowledging it.
We're really not going to know unless we have ongoing dialogue and engagement with students. So I think that's a piece that we're missing. We say we're going to commit to that dialogue and engagement with community, but I think students have to be factored in because they're the people we're serving.
So in listening, does emotional toll, as Dr. Holman sort of put forward, that to me seems to be the category of which we're speaking to, and there are many emotions that can fall into, and that can be defined as to whichever is the emotional toll that this is.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of characterizing it. I'm trying to figure out how to work that into the sentence. Maybe we don't need to do that tonight, but as long as we can capture that. I think Director Stewart for raising this, the importance of recognizing
The emotional.
the feelings that our students have, and that is an important component.
To John's point about emotional toll, I started to change the word, emotional toll. To me, a lot of folks wonder what that means. That's when I think you say emotional toll, such as fear, such as this, such as that. The word "such as" makes it seem a little bit unimportant. But emotional toll, including feelings of da 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 da, and try and hit all the points we heard from students, especially. One of the most poignant groups I heard was the GSA students from Juanita, and their inability to go to a counselor. But thank God they have their sponsors of their group, who they could talk to and could understand their situation. And I understand, I can see the fear for those students. It's because it's just as racism has been around and will continue to be around, a lot of the other issues of homophobia, so forth, will continue.
So is this social emotional support? Is that what we're speaking about? We know that they have, what was your phrase, John?
Emotional toll.
Emotional toll.
I think this is just recognizing that it exists.
Yeah.
And then I think the policy does speak to, how we are attempting to create safe, inclusive, welcoming environments for students. I think it's just how we recognize it well, so that we're not labeling someone's emotion for them, but allowing
Right.
them to identify their own emotion.
And to that end, I know there's surveying we can do, but also to be able to hear from students directly.
Yes. And the point I was going to make around kind of process is after tonight, I will schedule a follow-up meeting with my team here. And actually what we will do is we will finalize the policy. And then first reading for the board is on August 9th. And so there can be further dialogue at that point. But first reading is on August 9, incorporating changes that we bring forward for that evening.
That's great.
So,
So, I don't know, I've said my piece on this. I feel like I agree with what Dr. Holman said. Yeah, Dr. Carlson. Director
sorry,
Carlson.
I think I've solved it. Because in the current structure of it, we've got a failure to effectively address inequities creates a lack of belonging that perpetuates. And it's after that, you put in a clause that takes an emotional toll on students, comma, and perpetuates disproportionate. And that gets the emotional toll in here as a piece of it. And it's this leads to that, leads to that, leads to that. I feel like it fits together very nicely. So I just wanted to suggest that.
So,
So for the next changes that were sort of under the directive to the superintendent,
So
there
what
was
are we
the
looking at?
addition. Huh?
yeah. Where is the, I missed that. Where am I looking for the?
So for the updated directive piece, if you go to board docs, in the public space, you will see a PDF. It's also on the screen right now. And I'll make sure to share that screen over there as well.
.1, environments should be environment, singular. I like the parallels you guys have put in 14.1 and 2 for students and staff.
So I would first recommend read the directive to the superintendent because there is a change there and an addition.
Is this a quiz? Because I don't see it.
Good. No, it's not a quiz. We were trying to be much more specific in regards to the discrimination. So it used to say is free from discrimination. We actually utilizing some of the work that WASDA's policy had put forward. This is actually in alignment with some of that delegate work that had occurred. That now says identifies and eliminates discriminatory beliefs, prejudices, and practices to sort of be more specific.
I love it.
Okay.
Great.
So my only question around that is the beliefs. You know, eliminating beliefs is hard. It's hard to measure. We can actually measure practices and prejudices because there are specific outcomes. So I think we probably talked about that when we discussed this as well, but I understand and I agree that we want beliefs to change. We don't always have the ability to measure that.
And there you fall in the same space with our aspirational policies. Some of our policies you can't measure, but they're still important. So I think keeping beliefs in there is valuable.
I think if you leave beliefs in, you can say expressed beliefs, because you'll never hear the ones that no one voices.
After
John's
2020,
point.
I don't believe that anymore.
Beg pardon?
Sorry, I was trying to be funny. After 2020, I don't believe I will never hear the discriminatory beliefs out loud again.
Okay, then we can move to the specific directives. Thanks. Just want to make sure you were all aware of that. And so as we look through some of these, there was a discussion of how do we be more consistent in addressing some of the anti-racist component that was actually brought forward, as well as sort of combining some of these because they were duplicative. And then clarifying some specific items as we walked through it. And so those are some of the changes that you'll see. So 14.1, we took out 14.2, the original one. It's been renumbered. So now the 14, and so you'll see 14.1 and 14.2 align. And we just created the different one for student and staff because that made the most sense.
Like that.
I agree. So in 14.5, the word also is awkward. And I would provide curriculum and instruction that's culturally responsive and inclusive, comma, while providing for. So I'd replace also with while.
Did you say 14.4?
That was 5. Sorry. Overall, having now seen the clauses that accidentally wound up in the not clean version, or the clean version. Broadly speaking, I'm not seeing anything that causes me to freak out. I appreciate this. And honestly, this is one of those cases where, to me, if the title had anti-racist as the third clause, 14.1 and 2, I'm happy having anti-racist be the first in this list. That's a space where I can flip the script to make it work.
On 14.4, I'm just sort of struggling with what we are trying to achieve with 14.4.
Do you
Can
mean-
anyone speak to that? Remind me of what?
To what?
As distinct from the other ones, is that what you're?
Yeah,
Are you speaking to equitable and aligned systems and supports?
yes.
So kind of like the multi-tiered systems of support that we are utilizing to ensure that students are getting what they need.
So my thinking is, when I look at it, so the first part, strengthen and maintain a collaborative school culture that ensures high expectations and success for all students. And then through an equitable and aligned, I mean, there's presumably many ways to strengthen and maintain a collaborative school culture. It's not just through that. It's a question, I guess one idea I had is should the policy just be provide equitable and aligned systems and supports? You know, it doesn't, maybe that doesn't say anything, but.
Well, so is your concern that it's duplicative with 14.1, or is your concern that we're being specific and telling them how to achieve 14.1? Because calling out a system of supports, then we're telling them how to achieve the outcome, and I'm not sure we need that in here.
Honestly, I just read it, and I have a hard time understanding exactly what we're directing the superintendent
Which is
to do.
another bad sign, but I didn't want to call that part out.
Matt?
I'm wondering with this, with 14.5 or 14.4, if it's, the board's key interest is ensuring high expectations and success for students. And that it's less about the how that achieve that, but it's are we maintaining the high expectations for students, because that's the equitable outcomes that.
Thank you. That is the value that isn't in 14.1.
And that all students can achieve at high levels is what this is.
That we
speaking to.
expect it, and that
Yes.
we're going to hold to achieving it.
It seems that my paper version is struck out more than you've struck out on the.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the
Thank
paper
you.
version is out of
I was-
whack.
I was
Don't worry
having
about it.
Now I just have to be able to read the screen.
Yeah.
Give me both.
If you pull it down from, well, you've got the screen, you can probably read it, but if you pull it down from board docs, it's got the
I'm
edits.
sure I could. If I could find it.
Well, the paper's entertainingly bad. I mean, it's not just a little bit bad. It's really like, wow, there was supposed to be a clause there.
Truly, we read this and digested. and
Absolutely. And it's like
rehashed
the
and-
last time you hit take, it didn't take out the deletion.
Yeah.
And so you wound up with the Mad Libs for what goes in there.
I think that what we're doing is what we're hoping for as a board, and please speak up since I'm only one person, is we want to ensure that there's rigor and high expectations and success for all students. And how Dr. Holman gets that done is his
Is that
job.
5?
Agreed.
Okay.
Is that 5? I'm sorry. 4. I'm sorry.
14.4, it's
Thank
just
you.
basically eliminating everything after through.
Okay.
Maybe, or, I mean, okay, I'll just say what I think it should be. It should ensure high expectations and success for all students.
And again, you're pairing off the how. The collaborative school culture is secondary to what we want to achieve. How you get there is more or less, this is about our measurables, right?
I'd like to hear pushback on what I just said.
Actually, I'm not going to push back on it. I like it. I like a concise thing because that helps you be very specific on what you want.
My only concern, and this is almost out of the picture, but when you look at that sentence and we talk about ensure the high expectations and success, it seems, I can see some segments of our student population who are not necessarily college bound, seeing this as not speaking to them perhaps. Now, I realize that you can have success in your academic high school, middle school, whatever, career without being college bound. But my concern is that I can see a student reading into that, given the bias that we almost have in place in our society or our communities, that college bound is the way to go. I'm concerned that we need to kind of have something that speaks to the fact we're not just talking college bound. You see where I'm going?
Well, I'm expecting this for my special education student who will not live on his own. So in my mind, to me, it says success and rigor for all students. Now, the varying level for my individual student, it's going to vary a lot between somebody going into the workforce or going to college, but I absolutely expect it.
Okay. I wanted to ask the question more than try and make the change.
It's an interesting question, though, Mark, because success is definitional in the context of a student. This student, what is success for them and to them? And it's something where I think we do already have in the motto that preparing students, I mean, this is about ensuring high expectations of students and successful preparation of all students for whatever they're doing next. And whatever they're doing next is a little bit too informal to go into a policy, but it would be a little bit more specific about what we mean by success. Because success doesn't have to be passing the SAT with a 12 whatever. I mean, success is this student is ready for whatever is next.
Dr. Holman had when I started talking.
It's okay. I'll pass for now.
I'm wondering, given for the board that this is an operational expectation policy and not a results policy, and kind of what is it that you're trying to achieve in this segment? And I think what you're talking about is that as a school district, what we're not doing is that we're not ensuring that there's lower expectations for some groups of students that are somehow institutionalized in the educational experience. And so if that's what this is about, then it's also is kind of how do you phrase it as a board, and then for Dr. Holman and the rest of us to figure out how are we going to demonstrate that we're meeting that.
Do you have any suggestions how we might phrase that?
Working on it, but
Because that's what I was going to say.
Mike.
Well, just
He said
to
it
come
better.
back to that, though, then the equitable and aligned systems come back into play, right? Because that's where we see the differences in expectations, right? Like if one school has a way of keeping kids out of advanced placement courses, for example, they have prerequisites, and another school doesn't, that's a system that would need to be adjusted. So if we just say high expectations without the systems and aligned systems, I think we leave something out. So I know initially that was, well, we're getting into the how, but the systems are where we're seeing the problems, I think.
That's a really good
So
point. Go ahead.
the pieces I was thinking is how does this specifically apply to equity, inclusion, and anti-racism? So what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Because we have this under learning environment, right? We already have it. So what's special about it here? So I appreciate that. And Matt, I think you captured sort of the essence, and Mike, you've given the clear examples, and now the question is how do we word that?
Yeah, and when we're talking about high expectations of students, historically, I think what we're trying to prevent is the historical thing of saying, with all the dimensions we've called out of a student identity, of setting the bar low on the basis of what we've assumed about that student. And so it is very relevant to be in this policy explicitly that our high expectations of all students and appropriate supports for all students, without specifying what kind of, that And here's the irony. I think maybe we just cut success out of this one. That success is a different problem to measure. That this is about the expectations of students and the supports provided to students on the basis of who they are.
So my thought, and I see what you're saying, my thought is over-identification of Spanish-speaking students for special education. That, to me, is an example of not expecting rigor. Yeah. So where would that go?
And that's where when we're wrestling with the high expectations, it's somehow making it explicit that the expectations are specific to that student. Because when you're talking about a student where success for that student is to be able to live in a group home, that is one thing. And for that student, it may be success. But making sure that because you're Hispanic, you're not assumed to need to live in a group home. So how do we thread that needle in the high expectations to make them specific to students but not prejudicial?
I think the reason we're listing it is because we have seen examples of it, like the over-identification for special education. So we listed it for a reason. Is it somewhere else?
But I think the reason it was listed was, especially under this, was to ensure the supports were in place. I think that is the piece as to why that falls out with the MTSS component at the end. And so by getting rid of that, we actually lose its focus in this policy. I don't think it's worded the way we want it, but I do think the supports matter, because it is that. It's the multifaceted approach in which you don't just hold high expectations and say, go.
Yeah, you support them for success.
Right. And that was the problem with the race to the top, was the assumption that success would be for every student the same finish line. Here, we're ensuring high individualized expectations without prejudice, and the supports to achieve those, and appropriate supports required to achieve those expectations.
That's what MTSS is about, right? Giving the kids the support that they need to have success as an individual and become a contributing member of society.
And I'm just trying to avoid putting MTSS, which is an
Right, right.
acronym for a
How to,
specific
right.
space, into this generically. It's appropriate supports to achieve the individually. God, how do you say? You want it to be individualized to the extent that a left-hander isn't told they have to write with the right hand. But you don't want to say that it has to be individualized for every dimension of the student, because part of what we're saying is that we don't want student performance to be predictable on the basis of all these incoming factors. So that's the tough needle to thread here.
So I know this will be a surprise, but anytime we talk about these, I automatically go to what are the indicators that potentially could then help inform these, because I think that, like, the words we put on paper are only as good as the indicators and data that you're then able to evaluate. So a few things that I've thought about in terms of 14.4, and just for the sake of the argument, provide high expectations and success for all students through aligned and equitable systems. So let's just assume that that's the board's policy statement. There will be outcomes from MTSS, even though it's essentially a cycle for students. They go through assessment and instruction and assessment and and it's going through this kind of constant cycle for students. But I also, using culturally responsive assessments for the qualification of special education, I believe there's data available that we could then report out around percent of students qualifying and what is the makeup of those students. Because if disproportionality is the specific issue around high expectations and success that we're talking about here, well, then that data can be reported. I also think about benchmark assessments and the growth for all student groups, but also our other demographic groups, looking at the growth and progress students are making within our benchmark assessments. Then I think about student access to dual credit coursework. And I know that's something we've already reported to the board, but I also think it's applicable here. So those are just, in a 5-minute conversation, a few pieces that I was thinking about.
I really appreciate that, and I actually wanted to think about, proposed language. Bear with me because it's not up there in front of you, but ensure appropriately rigorous expectations for each individual student. By doing that, you've made it specific. The expectations are not uniform, that is personalized to each student, and appropriate supports, allowing each student to achieve personal success. Again, saying the finish line is not the same for every student. We want it to be as rigorous as possible for that student. It still doesn't quite get the piece about we don't want this finish line to be changed by whether or not you're Hispanic or Muslim or whatever, but allowing for the individual things, being left-handed or being a SPED student, being an ELL student, so that you can have expectations that change conditional on things that are student-specific. So I haven't got the third part in there, but at least the first part is ensuring appropriately rigorous expectations for each individual student. So the expectations are explicitly student-specific, and appropriate supports allowing each student to achieve personal success. That gets us most of the way there. We're just missing the part where we try to say you can't set your expectations on the basis of skin color, race, religion, sex, etc. And so, go for it, Mike.
So the other thing, though, I believe that we hold students to high expectations so they can succeed. So high expectations aren't the outcomes, the success is. And so I wonder if you lead with that is, it's going to be, pull it up here, strengthen and maintain school cultures that ensure student success by holding high expectations for each student combined with equitable systems of support, or together with equitable systems of support. So, because, I mean, that really is, we said if you have high expectations for a kid, that leads to an outcome. So I think that's what you want to lead with. And so it's what you were saying, though, earlier, Chris. We said, oh, just tell the kids, you can do this, and I'm going to hold you to the high standard, but then we didn't build in the supports. And so, for example, with an EL student or an Hispanic student who doesn't speak the language, the supports are needing to make sure that we're assessing them in their native language so we can see if they are needing special education services or not. And so that's a support that's built in. But just having a high expectation by itself is not going to get that student to be successful in school.
Again, that's really helpful clarification because the measurable at the end is the most important part that's going to derive from this. And high expectations are simply one component of trying to get to that measurable. And that's something I'm happy to put in there as we expect you to have high expectations for each student. We're not telling you how to achieve that, but that we know that you can't achieve it if you don't have high expectations for a student. Or won't, rather than can't.
Quick question.
I mean, we want all kids to graduate, right? And we want all kids to be able to move on to the next thing that comes for them in their lives after graduation. And so graduation is part of the success, hopefully a fair part of the success, because without the high school diploma, it's very difficult to move on to anything else.
But I like Mike's words better than I liked mine, so good.
So Mike, you were essentially just saying take out collaborative.
So I have strengthen and maintain school cultures that ensure success through high expectations together with equitable and aligned systems of support.
Yeah.
Or systems and supports.
I think that speaks to the need for high expectations to be part of a school, because an individual holding high expectations doesn't lead to overall success. It really is an entire school community holding high expectations as a consistently over time. So,
I can live with the approximation or what Mike said, what Mike just proposed.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I opened this conversation by saying we should eliminate all of that. I've changed my mind.
John, if you say expectations of the school as opposed to the individual, that to me says, okay, if we achieve a 97% rate, we're happy, and it's those other 3% just didn't quite matter. Yeah, I mean, and that's an interpretation that shouldn't be there, but I can hear it. There's a large sentiment out there that if you're not an AP student, you don't matter. If you're not a dual credit student, you don't matter. And that's what I'm concerned about, whether it's the college-bound issue or whatever the next step may be, that those students don't feel like, oh, they don't give a rat's patoot about me because I'm not an AP student. I never will be an AP student. Whether it's by desire, ability, whatever it might be. Again, we make it difficult for students to go into the trades. Very difficult. If you want to go into the trades, you have to either get in your car or get in your bus and go to Lake Washington Tech. If you want to go to an AP class, you go down the hall and to the left. And so it's structural things like that. And I think if we talk about the success of the school as opposed to the student, then we're codifying it in policy as opposed to trying to address it. You mentioned earlier, and I'm trying to, culturally responsive, and I think it was assessments. I think it goes beyond just special education, though, because I think we have to look at that. When they had the presentation of the new books, of the new curriculum, I guess it was math, and I couldn't quite see how it made a difference, how they had adjusted to be more equitable. They were saying that in speaking with the students in doing a cultural assessment, that there were certain words that resonated better, so forth. And so I'd hate to think that we just limited it to special ed. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but I'd like to make sure that we have it kind of a universal look at anything we do to be culturally responsive.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
To Mark's first point on that, when we talk about success, just where it says success for all students, or if it says success for all students, success for all students implies that it's the same definition of success for every student. Success for each student gets at a different dimension. I think that solves the problem for that piece of it.
Yes, I think you're right.
That said, I actually want to skip forward to 14.7. So if we're not done with 14.4, or are we done? Oh, sorry. So 14.5 and 6, aside from grammatical minor tweaks, I got no issues. 14.7, professional development. I'm very pleased to see receive ongoing professional development. One of those receives has got to go. But yeah, probably the second one. But to inform and practice cultural humility, I guess that must be hot, and increase awareness of personal and systemic racial equity, anti-bias, and inequities. That's awkward. It's a victim of editing. And I want to make sure that we're just on the same page as to what the aspiration is for the phrase, rather than wordsmithing this. So I wanted to ask the two of you, what's the important piece you're getting at here that isn't in other 14 point whatevers?
I'm going to bounce it back. What do you believe is the value being stated there?
And to me, the most important piece of value is that it's ongoing professional development in sensitivity to the various dimensions of that we care about. I'm not certain that inform and practice cultural humility is a phrase I want to throw in there, but at the same time, I do want to help people understand. Cultural sensitivity, I get. Cultural humility, I'm not sure I buy into that as a phrase in the policy. It implies that I'm somehow wrong to begin with. Cultural sensitivity is understanding that I may be dominant, but there's other cultures out there and they matter. And
I think the practice piece came in because we don't want staff to just receive training. We want them to do something with the training. So I feel like it's more of an action piece. I don't know what you thought, Siri.
No, absolutely the practice, but I think your question is really around the use of cultural humility.
sorry, it's just the bigger piece
So
of it. What's the training you're asking
That
for?
concept was, so you have cultural competences often talked about, and those pieces. The challenge with that is it implies that you yourself can understand every single culture that's out there, and if you were competent. Cultural humility actually has more of a presentation of you recognize that we all have things to learn from others, and our culture is one of many. And so it's not that yours is less than or more than anybody. It really is that it's about curiosity of other people, places, practices, customs, the fact of, you take your shoes off at the door and somebody else doesn't. And is one right or wrong? No, not necessarily. It's the reality of where you work and where you go. So cultural humility really is more about a practice of how you handle questions and changes and differences within people. So it actually is a step. We've started with cultural diversity, then it moved to cultural sensitivity, we had cultural competence, we have cultural responsiveness, and cultural humility is just another way of saying it, but recognizing that the dominant culture isn't the reference point.
Surprisingly, you have won me over. So, let's go to the next clause.
Mark the calendar real quick.
Yeah. No, I get that. It wasn't immediately obvious to me, but I get the importance of that. So then on to the awareness of personal and systemic racial equity, anti-bias, and inequities. Wait, what? Back up. Awareness of personal bias, I get. But when you say awareness of personal racial equity, I have no idea what the hell we're talking about. So somewhere we got to retool this clause into the dimensions that matter for personal versus systemic. And it's not in the print version, or is it? It's the one online.
No, I'm actually looking at the original sentence
okay.
to see if I can go back to where it
Reconstruct
started.
it, okay.
And I think potentially more got crossed out than was supposed to. So I'm just trying to confirm.
Because in the long run, I do think when we say, as a board, what kind of professional development do we want? We want professional development that allows individuals to grow as individuals, but we also want professional development that helps them recognize systemic problems and address them. And if you don't see it, you're not going to fix it. So those are, I think that both the personal and systemic are important clauses here, but somehow we need to put them together, break them apart, rather.
So how do you want to do that? I agree with you. I don't think it's well written. I think it's repetitive. I don't think it's clear. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Chris, what if we, awareness of personal bias and systemic inequities?
Well, and personal bias, yeah, I mean, it's awareness of personal bias. I'm also trying not to step into a minefield in the current cultural wars, that if we somehow write this in such a way that it could be interpreted as anybody who is white therefore is racist, it is not going to help our cause. And I'm more interested in achieving the right outcome than in having the words perfectly correct. So I don't have an answer yet. I'm still mulling it.
Matt?
So this year, the legislature passed Senate Bill 5044, which actually they've developed language as around the expectations for training for all educators. don't have, I mean, trying to go through the bill law, but, oh, sorry. So this year, the state legislature passed Senate Bill 5044, which outlines expectations for learning for educators regarding cultural competency, and they have language that might be good to look at because that will be held account, the expectation is that's our training would be in alignment with that. And so having some alignment between board policy and that bill might make sense. And if they've done some work to do the wordsmithing, maybe we can crib that.
So, yeah, actually, now I'm seeing it even better because the insurer staff receive ongoing professional development. And then now we're breaking into, is it about systemic or is it about personal? And so I would start with the personal so where to inform and practice, it's to learn and practice cultural humility on an individual teacher basis, I think would be more useful or easier interpreted by your naive reader. And that allows us to, and increase awareness of potential personal biases. And then you can get into, and also the systemic, to recognize systemic bias and inequities would, I think, address all the pieces I'm real worried about here.
It sounds pretty good to me.
Okay, so you're writing this all down, John, you got it? Okay, and we can look up SB 5044.
.8 is good enough. 14.9, ensure students, staff, and families are provided culturally responsive methods to address concerns or grievances. That's 80% of what I want. I also want it to have a system where they feel comfortable bringing equity and race and inclusion concerns in, and that's not necessarily there in 14.8 yet.
Yeah, so it's more of a, how can they feel safe and confident in bringing these concerns forward?
Yeah, exactly.
Because-
We need a system for doing it that they can have confidence in.
Right. And I know that there have been concerns of potential quote-unquote retribution, and that happens a lot in the hospital settings as well, where parents, maybe who don't speak English, are concerned about bringing up something they want to do for their child that the doctor is perhaps telling them, something else. But there's hesitancy to bring it up because the doctor's the professional, and et cetera, et cetera. So yes, I agree with finding that way that they can communicate grievances that feels comfortable.
There's a word, perhaps the idea of throwing in encouraging. I'm not sure how it fits in, but I'm thinking that we're not only telling them that they're welcome to do so, but we encourage them to do so. We want to hear, while we don't want to have problems, we don't want to be deaf to problems that we're not aware of because of our culture, someone else's culture. It may be a situation of, it goes back to each year when we have to check the calendar again for Rosh Hashanah. That's something where if you encourage people to come forward, and we often said that the various religions, that we don't know what their high holidays are, and so we emphasize the wrong ones. So I think it's to encourage folks to come forward.
Encouraging is great. We just need to have a way that they feel comfortable sharing it. We can encourage them to share it, but in the current system, are they concerned about sharing it? So how do we address the concern part?
Mark, I hear you on encourage. I'm not sure how it is. We need a system where people are confident enough that we will take them seriously, that there will not be repercussions for reporting something. we need a system people can have confidence in. Honestly, that's fundamentally where it's at, because you want to know that you're going to be listened to, and that appropriate actions can and will be taken, and that they'll be taken in a way that's systematically responsible. Because it is possible to put together a system that's not accountable to itself, and you could accidentally have repercussions on someone where something gets reported, it was misunderstood, and you wind up persecuting the wrong person. So confidence in a
Receptivity?
receptivity to, receptivity. It's a welcoming criticism, and that's hard to. I don't know how to say it in a way that, because the most important thing to me, yes, welcoming criticism is how I want the organization to respond. But the most important part is the system has a system for collecting these issues and putting them into hey, we need to address this, that it gets fed to the right person. I don't know that there's a whole lot of confidence that if you filed a complaint over a racist incident through Let's Talk, that you'd hear back and that appropriate action would be taken. So welcoming is after we've got the confidence in the system.
Well, the phrase you had a problem with to criticize, to present your perspective, your feelings, to present your complaint, but it doesn't have to necessarily be a complaint, but it could be you're missing something here, and we'd like to encourage you to think of ABC as opposed to just AB. You see where I'm going? And so now it all depends on how you receive it. If someone tells me if someone tells a person you're not doing you're doing A and B but not C, well, the person may take it as a criticism. It's not necessarily meant to be. It's meant to be perhaps a constructive criticism. But I think it's not only the process of giving the complaint, but also how it's received. And I think that's one of the things we need to point out, that staff will be to be more receptive to all perspectives. I don't know. I'm trying to grasp as many concepts as possible to go with there.
Okay, so what are the important pieces on this? Yeah, go ahead. Someone else talk. Go for it, John.
I have a friendly 2-word amendment. After culturally responsive, if we put and safe, because then you're defining a process that is responsive to individuals, but it's also layered with safety, which is what an individual experiences. The current statement says addresses concerns, so I think it isn't about just hearing a concern. The policy requires a response to the concern or grievance. So to me, adding the words and safety, or and safe, culturally responsive and safe methods to address concerns or grievances may get after what you're thinking about.
Now you're really getting there, and honestly, I guess it's currently taking too long to get to the meat of it. And sure, students, staff, and families are. No, we want you to provide a culturally responsive and safe system for reporting, for students, staff, and families to report concerns, grievances, or violations of this policy.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Considering the issue that we were trying to encourage positive behavior as opposed to punishing bad behavior, in this area, I'm not sure we can continue to do that. It's the idea of to assure the parent or whether the child, whatever, of non-retaliatory response. It's an open. It's an open door. It's not an open door that's a trap that's going to fall over on top of them after they walk through that door.
And that is
It may go too
narrower
far.
piece of safe.
Beg your pardon?
Sorry, a non-retaliatory is a smaller subset of safe.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so, but I would expect to see
Also,
something about
it's more definitive, though.
non-retaliatory in the interpretation.
But it's also more definitive, because to me, safe may mean as opposed to getting hit with a baseball bat, but retaliatory can be very subtle.
Exactly, and that's why I think as a board, I could live with putting safe in, but I would expect the interpretation of safe to be much more layered.
There you go. What?
No, I'm just thinking safe and without repercussion.
Or retaliation.
And exactly, and so that there, without repercussion, is still a subset there of safe, and retaliation is a subset of safe. But these are the things that the interpretation should be addressing, is that I interpret safe to mean that their reports will be kept in confidence, that their concerns will be taken seriously, that they will be treated with respect, and that reported violations will be investigated to the full extent of our abilities. But that's all on his side, that's not me.
Think
So-
about the indicators here too. I mean, if we're
Yeah.
talking about, okay, safe, right? I mean, that will capture the indicator. You know, well, there was a survey. Did you feel safe making if somebody was retaliated against, they will most likely report they did not feel safe. Or they will report that their concerns were not addressed. I mean, that's what we're going to capture. So I'm fine with, I think Chris had the last proposed language, or refinement to the language.
John, would you remind me on indicators when you're planning to give us some of your indicators?
Targeting August 23rd. I guess that's when you're adopting the policy. So probably September, what is it, 9? I think is the first board meeting in September.
You're presenting them on September 9th or your 23rd?
September 9, because August 23rd is when you're adopting the policy.
Right.
Final
So
action on
we
the
will have
policy.
time to visit those. Yep, they come in, okay.
I don't have any other substantive edits to the policy.
No, I'm with you. 10 and 11, I'm good with.
Thank you, Cassandra and Siri, for taking the laboring oar on this. A lot of work, and also, I don't know, this is a tricky topic to be on the lead of, so thank you for being willing to do that. Director Stewart?
Yeah, I echo that sentiment. As we go through and we look, especially as you're looking at your interpretations, it's mistaking language or cultural issues for intelligence issues is what we're really addressing in a lot of these issues. Whether it's an ability to perceive it or an ability to translate it. A child with autism may hear the words, but they won't have a receptivity of it. A person who doesn't speak English is going to hear the words, but they're not going to know what you're saying. So I think it's the idea of and that goes to the issue of over-identifying Latino students into SPED. The idea of misperceiving their culture for their intelligence, or their ability for their intelligence. So that's, I think if we can work that in somewhere, I don't think it really hits one specific point of those, but it really kind of addresses it all when you think about it. Because I think it addresses that segment of the concern of parents that heck, it even goes to the parent who moved here from Timbuktu or from Enid, Oklahoma to here, saying, well, gee, we know that your school system there stinks, so we think he's probably less intelligent or she's less intelligent. Anyway.
Any other, I have a process question, but before we get there, any other questions, comments on the policy? Director Carlson?
Getting back to the title.
Right, right.
Honestly, I don't really feel like we need to flog this horse anymore, and I'm happy to go with the majority vote. But for me, it's AEI or EIA. And I figure we can just take a consensus. I'm willing to support it if I wind up on the minority on that. So, really, there's only one side of the vote you need to take, because the other half winds up being negative of it. So, all those in favor of AEI?
Just to be clear, we're not voting.
No, God damn it. I thought I had this finessed. I thought I was going to be able to put it to bed tonight. Okay, well,
Chris,
sorry.
I think what I've heard from the board this evening is anti-racism, equity, and inclusion. I believe that is what I've heard.
I think that's what I've heard too. We'll have the
I can live with
opportunity-
it,
we
but
will
I
have the
reserve the right
opportunity
to
vote
grouse
on
about
on
it
the
later.
23rd.
So, no, that's all right. It's not important enough to make a big issue, so.
Any other questions or comments or questions on the policy? Okay, process-wise, okay, so this is going to come forward for first reading on August 9. It will be in the board packet in advance of then. That's typically posted on the Thursday before.
The Friday before. As soon as the team and I get together, we'll update the draft and send it out to the full board so that you can see where we've landed. And then, yes, it is posted on Friday before the board meeting.
Okay. I thought, because that's not a lot of time for most people to review and provide feedback or have thoughts on it. We've engaged with a lot of stakeholders in this process. I assume we have their contact information, all the different folks that we've been able to do linkages with. It probably be a good idea to send where we're at to those who've particularly those who've actively engaged in the process, as far in advance as we can.
Yeah. So some groups, they've had leadership that have distributed invites, so we don't have their contact information, but we can definitely send this out to all of those that we do, and then ask those that forwarded invitations and things like that. Just ask them to forward it on to their groups.
And I think as a board, we can, we also have contacts too, and I think we should be trying to do that too, as early as we can, start the process of soliciting feedback. I think we'll learn something new that we haven't thought about.
So it'll be posted the Thursday before the meeting?
The Friday before the meeting.
Friday before the
And this is a first reading on August 9. It's not adoption of a policy. It's a similar pattern to what we've tried to adopt with the majority of large decisions that the board is making. And so policy is just that way by nature. And so you have a first reading, and really you then have the opportunity for community feedback between that first reading and when you take final action, as well as between Friday when it's posted and the board meeting.
May I suggest that when you, we talk that, say whether online or for that matter, in the emails that are going out to people, put it in boldface, underline, first reading does not mean adoption. I mean, I think a lot of folks will say, well, first reading, well, then fine, you read it, then you're going to adopt it later. Well, no, this is first reading, and X date will be adoption or can conceivably be adoption.
Yeah, we can put that in.
Yeah, I just want to, don't want anybody misinterpreting.
So I have confidence in our team that we will have the draft ready before the Friday, before the Monday. So we could post it earlier to give board members more time to look it over, to give the public more time to look it over, and then also to understand that that is not the meeting that we are voting on it.
I'll work with the other team member who knows how to post things in appropriate places. We'll figure that out.
And will August 9 have an interpretation draft?
No.
Will there be an interpretation draft of any components of it?
Before the board adopts policy?
Basically, so that people can, I imagine, I can see people with pitchforks and torches who expect to see something in the policy that is actually going to be in the interpretation, where if they don't see the interpretation before we adopt the policy, they're going to be pissed off. And it's an own goal on us if we don't show them it's in there. It's just this isn't where it goes. And so I'm hoping there's some way to get something that's a draft interpretation of at least one of these dimensions out for the public to see. This is what it's going to look like for the rest of these, so that you don't panic that your favorite metric isn't in our policy explicitly.
Well, to Chris's point, I think it's the fact that we had a lot of parents and students, I think, say that it's great to say what we expect, what we want to have, but then they want to have a segment of here's what happens if you don't. They want some teeth. And I think by having your interpretation, that gives where the teeth will lie.
Yes, I agree. Also, to have the superintendent drafting interpretations of policies that we haven't adopted yet is, a little cart before the horse, and that also suggests that these things are just baked in and we're not actually actively seeking community input. So that's the risk of having that as an approach too, because we have not enacted this policy tonight and we're not enacting it on the 9th. And we do want to hear from the community on the policy itself. I'm hesitant to direct the superintendent or even suggest that to bring forward interpretations of policies that we haven't adopted yet.
At our last meeting, I believe we did ask the superintendent to do
thought
that
about it
to a
more.
certain extent. We had talked about, and in our meeting, we had talked about definitions at least, and so we had highlighted some of the key words that needed some defining so that it was a little more clear, because that sort of came out through the linkages, that there was language being utilized, that there wasn't agreement on the definitions, and so that was important, even as you read the policy,
Yeah.
to be able to understand, well, what does equity mean as we speak to it? What does inclusion mean when we speak to it? So I think that was it. And so I do think I understand the cart before the horse concept, but I also know that the majority of these are pretty clear. There might be some tweaks and changes that go, and a draft is always that. It is just a draft. And so going forward with, are there some very clear ones that you could break out and we could at least give examples of certain directives of those at the end of here's what it would look like and here's what, we don't have the data necessarily to provide at that point, but at least the metrics we'd be looking at. And Dr. Holman has done one at this point and drafted it and we will say very drafty at this point in time. Is that fair?
Very drafty.
But to get at the idea that there is that challenge of how do you have the complete package of what the policy really means and where it goes so that you can hold those conversations more effectively.
And I think to that point, even how it's laid out right now, definitions need to be pulled out from kind of the laundry list and embedded into the different subsections of the policy, because a term can actually mean different things in different contexts within the policy. And so what I'm about to hand you, I don't think we should spend a tremendous amount of time getting into the absolutes because this is very drafty. I just spent a bit of time with Cabinet today starting to look at some of maybe the first 5 definitions as we looked at anti-racist, safe, inclusive, things like that. But then you can see 14.1 starts to provide some definition, started thinking about some of the indicators of 14.1, which kind of gets to your point of what is this going to look like in the end. So I will pass this around. Why don't you take a look?
Honestly, I do hear the concern about cart before the horse. It's just, I don't want to waste the people who are really into trying to follow this. I don't want to waste their time telling us that we need definitions when I know definitions are coming.
Yep.
Yeah. I think you've convinced me. Thank you.
So if you turn to page 3 of this, and as you can see, I just put it into the monitoring report format. You can see on page 3 and 4, these are all of the definitions that Siri, Cassandra, and I started to identify within the policy that are going to need definition. And so, again, this was a first run at drafting language. It wasn't, there's nothing final here. But again, went through terms such as anti-racist, inclusive, inclusion. That's a difference from when Siri, Cassandra, and I met. We actually broke out those two terms because they're different. Equitable, and I think honestly that's where we probably stopped today as a group to write it equitable. So you can see within this policy, there's a lot of language that we want to accurately describe to the best of our abilities. So then moving forward, when we're using these terms, we actually use these operational definitions that the policy references.
One quick thing, as I noticed that SAFE was on here, and we go back to our discussion we had earlier, perhaps the discussion items that we were talking about, how to define SAFE, go in here.
Absolutely.
And some of the, I forget the other term that we had that we were afraid of putting too many definitions into, but so I don't know if it's on the list. There was another one I'm blanking on, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But SAFE was the one that came to mind.
Yep.
And I would say that defining these terms helps me as a board member, because I might also not have the same definition. So I think it's extremely helpful to define what they mean in relation to this policy.
And then if you turn to page 4, on the very bottom, the start of an interpretation of 14.1 specifically. And so the policy statement ensures students have an anti-racist, inclusive, equitable, welcome, and safe school and classroom environments. And so then by interpreting that, you can see how it kind of starts to spell it out a little bit more. With then on page 5, you can see some of the indicators of compliance. And identifying specific benchmarks, as in, percent of students that indicate that they believe their school is a place that reflects an inclusive, equitable, welcoming, and safe environment. That's an important aspect. What got brought into the room today was, well, it's about all students, but it's also about understanding the experience of the specific student groups that we are addressing by the adoption of this policy. And so that's why in parens it says all student group category and desegregated by other factors, because it's important, and I believe that to be in compliance, it would need to be both the all student group and our desegregated groups. And so that's, as we think about the indicators, that's unpacking this even further. The percent of students that indicate that they learn about, discuss, and confront issues of race, ethnicity, and culture in school. Those are data that we actually collected this year, actually 2 points in time this year that we can report on as we think about environments that are anti-racist, getting feedback from our students about, well, if we never talk about issues of race and racism, then how could our students be actively engaged in anti-racist conversations? And so that's where that's coming from. Currently, we use the 9 characteristics survey with our staff to understand their perceptions and experiences within their school. We may be transitioning to a new, maybe I'll say more modern tool. 9 characteristics has been around for about 25 years, if I remember correctly. But it's a data tool that we use, and so you can see there on that third item, there's an item that's asked of staff, do they respect the cultural heritage of students? And so then the fourth item, you'll see it's families report X on X survey that X. I think it's important to have parent and family voice in these indicators as well. Then you can see the next two, because we're talking about a school environment, it's about what are the types of training that we are assuring that our staff are receiving, knowing that we have a policy statement, was it 14.7, that's all about professional development, but I think professional development is important in this area as well. Not only professional development on our policies and procedures, which is critically important for our compliance, but also to make sure that staff are aware of their requirements, but also the professional learning around anti-racist, inclusive, equitable, welcoming, and safe school and classroom environments. You can see then the next set of indicators are around our evaluation tools, both our leadership framework, so evaluation components from our building administrator evaluations, both teacher and principal evaluations have components around creating a positive culture, both at the school level and in the classroom level. And so looked at those frameworks to identify specific language that really does call out specifics of classroom and school environments for students. So that's the indicator, as I started thinking about this, the indicators that are present. And then as we were talking in cabinet today, we're really going to do a master plan around our surveying strategy to make sure that all of the indicators that need actual perception data from staff, students, families is accounted for throughout the year. So when we're reporting, if it is a baseline year, we have that baseline or we have that ongoing data set. So that's where I landed on this one for now. And I believe probably by August 23, I could have more of these fleshed out to this degree, because also to try and get it done completely between August 23 and the first board meeting in September, that's a significant effort, and so definitely we will start.
One item, as we go to, in fact, it goes up to point number one when we talk about disaggregating. In the past, we've had a reluctance to disaggregate when it got down to a very small group of students. I think it's very important that we go ahead and disaggregate, no matter how small that segment might be, so we do have input and the feelings of if the smaller, to be quite frank, the smaller the group, the more they're going to feel isolated. So when we do it, I'd encourage us to make sure that if we have to go down to 5 students, we go down to 5 students.
So there's an actual law around disaggregation and use of data, and so we will
Follow the letter of the law, then, I'm sorry. But I think that if we are limited as to how far we can go down, then we need to talk about those limitations either here or someplace else.
Yep, good idea.
Because that way the parents and the students will not feel that we have dismissed it.
And, a lot of the student data that has to be, redacted because of that is typically, at a single grade level. When we're talking about elementary students, typically there's not going to be a student group that can't be represented in these types of data.
Okay. The other point I wanted to make is that it looks like about the latter third of the indications, or pardon me, the indicators of compliance seems to address the problem of people wanting to know what happens if you don't comply. Because it talks about that the school administrators will see proficient or higher on their evaluations and so forth. I think we need to perhaps spell out that these indicators in particular, talk about non-compliance of the policy, only because parents don't feel that it's ever spelled out. And I don't say that we really have to have that for all of the policies, but in this one in particular, the parents feel that, the ones that I heard feel that it's, okay, you're going to put something nice on paper and then it's going to be shelved or it's going to be put into the memory banks of the computer and that's going to be about it. But I think they need to see that this is what happens if you don't.
Well, that's our job as a board, is to monitor, evaluate, and.
I understand that, but they need to know that it's there.
It's in our, well, I'm happy to say it again at the board meeting too. I mean, part of the evaluation of the superintendent is through his or her compliance with these policies, and our decision to renew or not renew the superintendent's contract is based upon that, so.
I think the other piece is, and was it OE 11 or 10 that we just brought to the board, and we indicated a couple of those pieces as not in compliance, and it was a request of the board to, great, thank you for, providing the evidence around something not being in compliance, but then what? So providing essentially the next steps around that, any area that's not in compliance, so that it's clear and specific to the board as to what the next steps are. And then it gives you a better set of information to actually evaluate.
Mark raises a good point, though, and that is, we as a board, is probably something we as a board need to talk about, not just for this policy, but for all of our policies, and that is how we're monitoring, what we're doing with the monitoring reports, and our process for that. Because, otherwise, what it is potentially just a piece of paper that goes on consent agenda and that's it, and that's not good enough.
So that's something where I think there's a subtlety to it that I'm very interested in getting into. And you're right, it's not just this one. But as we adopt this, there are gaps we already know are out there. We've seen them over and over and over. They've always been there, and they're not necessarily getting smaller. And so having something where the aspirational indicator of compliance is that there will not be a statistically meaningful gap between Group A and Group B is something we already know is not something one solves in 1 year. And that's something where, Mark, your point about what are we going to do about it? Well, I think it may be better for us to put a more subtle definition of success. Because in the draft here, you've got a set of indicators of compliance. Now, for OE 14.1, I don't think any of these are unmeetable because I'm not sure we've got a sense for, is there a gap on these yet? But I know that there are going to be these other spaces where we already know there are gaps, whether it's in the diversity of our staff or it's in the performance of subgroups of students. We already know those gaps exist. And saying we want them gaps to not exist is setting us up to, we're in a bad situation as the boss of the district. We know we're not going to hit that mark, and therefore it's not going to be in compliance. And at the end, are we going to fire John or not fire John? We already know the outcome. What we don't know is how much do we want to see that closed? What do we think is a meaningful change? And that's something where I think it's legitimate to say, look, in 3 years, we want to see this gap be 5% smaller. Or, a third smaller, depends on what. But, if it's 15% now, in 3 years, we want this to be 10%. To say, we know it's going to take time and energy to close it, but that we do expect there to be significant progress. And if there is not significant progress, that is a definition of failure, as opposed to a definition of success, where we know that we're not going, sorry, if you're talking about your kid, your kid's not going to be 6 feet tall next year, but maybe they can grow to that with time. And so this is something I think, these are very nice. I'm not asking you to do that for 14.1. I'm talking about the ones where we already know we've got gaps. And how do we put some indicators of compliance on there where you can say, we're in partial compliance. We are moving in the right direction, even though we're not there yet.
And so this is in that process of defining those indicators you can also build in. We had this discussion around MTSS and how that has been implemented, and that's a multi-phased process going in. So it could be, we expect 50% of the schools to have it in this year, and then we expect 75 to have it in the following.
Not quite where I was going, but it's an interesting separate piece, because there is something you're truly in control of. How many people have taken the survey? if you've applied the survey to everyone, you can do that at 100%
If I can
in 1
finish
year.
my whole thought,
Okay,
I'd
finish the
appreciate
rest of
that.
it, because
the
you
time was
were going in a
not
different direction
empty
from where I
at
was
that
at.
point.
Okay, good. Finish it.
So with this, so the combination of pieces that you're speaking to is, as you do that, you're right, there's gap. We have the results as well that are dealing with some of that academic, social, emotional, and the other components, and those gaps are where we're looking at those results components. This is really operational and what's happening in sense of how there's the organization functioning. So we are looking at programs and systems within these more so than actual outcomes, because that would be under the results. So you're looking at how the organization is implementing a program along the way in which to impact your results on the other side.
I still think it's outcomes, though. It's not just process.
It's a combination of both of them, because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have steps along the way you're going to have a process component, because that's 5 years you expect to see an actual full implementation of something.
Benchmarks, basically. Benchmarks is what,
Same concept.
Look,
But in the
I
sense of
reserve the right to debate this with you again later.
That's fine, but what I would recommend is there are some very clear processes through the monitoring report and how to handle these multiple year components. There are some really good examples on how to do that. And that's a piece that we as a board, that after a monitoring report and having a summary of here's where we're falling, here's what we see, here's our questions going forward, the summary of it. Then there's a follow-up that needs to happen of what are any changes that need to take place, one, to the policy, where there are things that we found were a gap within that. Are there changes to those indicators that we need to do? Because one, either you met the indicator that was there, and is there more that needs to be changed, or is that good where it goes, or is there something missing, or is it? So there is a clear process that we can put into place, at least to start discussion. It won't answer things, but it will begin the discussion to be able to go forward.
I'm with you, Eric. I am quite skeptical. And it's not that I'm skeptical of the truth that, yes, the outcomes in the end report. I'm quite skeptical that our community is going to be particularly satisfied if we say the indicators of compliance with this policy are that you tried, not that you succeeded.
That's not what it is.
Well, that's what we have to be able to explain to our public, because if it's only indicators of compliance on, oh, I'm going to implement MTSS in X% of my buildings, big whoop-de-doo. Do we see fewer kids experiencing bad outcomes that were unacceptably predictable? That's what the community cares about.
And that's what our results should be showing.
And that's why when we're adopting our policy, we need the end results piece to be clearly linked. We can't say, oh yeah, and come back in 6 months for the part you actually care about. Otherwise, I'm going to get lynched for not putting any teeth into this policy.
may I suggest that you mentioned earlier that perhaps we should be looking at how to do that with using some of our other policies. I'd like to see this basically being the launching pad for how we should be doing it for the rest of them, because I think this is so important. It is so it's a pivotal point for the district, and to be quite frank, as other districts and other parts of society look at it. So I think if we use this as the beacon on the hill for the rest of our policies and the new way the policies, other policies should be written, let's do it with this one first. Because again, it is important. It is important to us, it's important to our students, it's important to our parents and our communities and our society as a whole.
So there are a few policy steps I would recommend. One, the monitoring reports should never be on consent as a starting point, period. They need to come at least a week prior before our meeting so that we have access to them and the ability to see them prior and have more time in which to read. There needs to be a presentation that actually works with it, and we started some of this in that process going forward. Utilization of amendments and motions in which to how you make changes to it going forward. And then when looking at the indicators, there is a lot of work in which to do to have those discussions and come to agreement. Because I will say we did some of the indicator work, and there was challenges as we started to do those. We went, that's not really a good one. No, the policy is our issue. But we haven't come back and revised those at this point. So I do think there are some clear steps that need to take place with that going forward.
Great. You grabbed the microphone a while ago and then I got yanked back.
I was just going to say, I would prefer to not see these on consent agenda. I think they need to be talked through in an open public meeting.
Excellent. One more process question on this. Dr. Holman, for the first reading on the 9th, will you be in a position to present some of this work? Or are you willing to, and would you be in a position to present some of this work that you did here as part of that, even at a high level?
Yes.
That was the right answer. Good job. I recognize the discomfort for presenting anything in draft, but I think it would just be helpful to provide some context, particularly since we're going to be soliciting feedback after that August 9 meeting. I just think it'd be helpful.
If for no other possibility, if you can't get all of them, at least show in a model of a variety of them, or 2, 3, whatever it may take, that you've got the capacity to do. But yes, I'd love to see them all, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I want to be able to show the public that this is how it's going to play out.
My only hesitancy is wanting to do it well and not wanting to present something for community consumption that it hasn't been well and thoroughly thought through and evaluated.
Yeah.
So that's
challenging.
my only hesitation, but I will definitely bring something of substance.
Okay. Thank you.
If that's the case, perhaps, and I know this is going to be so popular, inserting a meeting between the two meetings. And if you can't come up with it at meeting A, rather than expect it at A, have it at B. I'm just, again, throwing that out for thought to.
Yeah. I think whether it's the 9th or the 16th, yeah, I'm fine having it prepared and ready for the 9th, so.
Okay. Thank you.
I said it wouldn't be popular.
Any other questions, comments on the agenda item for tonight?
Apologies in advance for August 9th. I will not be on this continent, so I will not be available for that conversation.
Okay.
You can't telecommute in?
I will not be within range of an internet.
Okay. Excuse-
I will not have running water.
Okay. Okay.
You need one of those solar phones that go anywhere in the world.
Sending Chris to space.
It only costs a
Don't have
couple of
one yet.
$1,000.
Anyway, I just wanted to excuse myself in advance so you know I'm
Appreciate
not
that.
just fleeing.
Well, yeah. It will be available for viewing online when you return to civilization. Okay. The August 9 board meeting, there will be a 5 p.m. study session on August 9, followed by the board meeting at 7 p.m. And I should just note that at the August 9 board meeting, there will be a public hearing on the adoption of the 2020-2021 budget. I don't think it's on my script. Is that right? We're adopting. I thought we had the. Is that right? Okay. Okay. August 9, there will be a public hearing on the adoption of the 2020-2021 budget.
The last public hearing you're thinking of was for the budget extension.
Thank you. Okay. I had the wrong year.
You've already adopted
We've
the
already
2021 budget.
I know.
You-
Okay, so just to bring this one home, on August 9 at the board meeting, there will be a public hearing on the 2021-2022 budget, which will then be brought forward for adoption on the 23rd. In addition, as mentioned, as we discussed earlier, the first reading of our equity policy will be on the August 9 agenda, and that will be, the plan is to bring that forward for adoption on the 23rd as well. Okay, no other items on the agenda for tonight. The July 12 study session is adjourned.